Our first capital letter is the letter T. The first stroke in the T is also found in many other letters, so let's practice that. It starts at the center height here, and it starts out thin, and then you press for your shaded stroke, release your pressure, come up, and press down for your dot. So let's do a few more of those. Then press, release, press down for your dot. Press, release, press. The first part of the T. So the next stroke of the T, you start out light, press, release, press down for your dot. The second stroke begins here with a fine hairline stroke, and then you press, come down to about the waistline, go up and around, and then you loop over to connect the first and second stroke. So let's do another one of those. Our next letter is the capital F, and it begins the same way as the T with this fine hairline stroke that turns into a shaded stroke. You release your pressure, come up, and then go back down slightly for that dot. The second stroke is pretty much the same. Press down, go over, loop around, connect that, and then you add a crossbar, which I like to do just a little bit above the waistline. It starts a little bit below, comes up like so. So another way that you can do your F is have that second stroke hover above the first stroke so you don't connect it with the loop. And you could do this with the T as well. Come over. And I just created a quick, fast little ending there. So you could do your F that way. They both still look like Fs. Press down, release your pressure, dot, press, release, come around. You can loop over and connect it, and then your crossbar. So your capital P begins in a similar way to the T and the F, except I like to make it a little higher. It starts a little bit past the center height with a pointy hairline stroke, and then I press for my shaded stroke. I release my pressure, go up, come down for that dot. The second stroke begins light, and then you press for a shaded part, come up, and that's all light, and then you press again, and loop around. It's a little bigger than I usually make it, so let's do another one where it's just a touch smaller, where the second stroke is a bit smaller. That's a bit better. And I do leave it open. I come up and around and I leave it open. And also the T, the F, and the P, you would start with an entry stroke for your next letter. Okay? So let's say that was, for instance, let's do another P. The next letter is the capital B. And like the P, it's going to start a little bit above the center height, thin, and then thick. Come up, press down. This next stroke is rather a long one, Start out thin like the B, press down for that shaded part, come up and around, press, release your pressure even though you're still going down. Keep the pressure light, then press down for that shaded stroke, and then come around, and that also remains open. And for this letter, like the other ones, you would create an entry stroke for your next letter. Let's do another B. This one just a touch bigger. And don't forget to clean your pen nibs. Our next letter is the capital R. Again, begin a little bit above the sender height, press for your shaded stroke. And I am coming down on the baseline. This is always the baseline. Remember, this is your X height. So the next stroke, start out in the same way, press, release your pressure, come around, press, release your pressure, keep it light, press, and release. And now this is your first capital letter that would connect to your next letter. So its exit stroke is the entry stroke of your next letter. Okay, so let's do another R. Press, and even though I'm going down, I'm going to keep it light in the middle, and then I will press for this part. Let's do one more. The next letter is your capital D. Again, it starts a little bit above the sender height. Go up, I press down, and now this ends a little differently. I'm going to create a loop at the bottom. The second part is a bit bigger than the other letters. So you start here light and then press, go below the waistline, come up and around and then press, release your pressure and connect that bottom part to the loop. Give yourself plenty of time with this letter. It's a lot of letter. Start out light, press, release. Create this little loop on the bottom. Start out light, press, release your pressure. Come around, press again. Oops. This is actually a good example. This does happen where sometimes your pen nib could pick up a piece of the paper and drag it along. So what I would do now is clean my pen nib. If that was on an envelope or a place card, I probably would leave it. If it's on something to be reprinted, I would do it over. So it depends when these things happen and for what project. Start out light, press, loop over, press, release, come around, press, release, and connect the bottom. That's your capital D. The next letter is the capital I. So here I would start it like the T and the F at the ascender height. Come out light, then press for a shaded stroke, loop around, press down. The second part, traditionally it goes out to the side a bit and then comes down and it's left open. I do notice some students will slope this part down right away like this. I feel like it looks more like an I and less like a J. So it really depends on your preference. You'll see we're going to do the J next, and they do look quite different side by side. So again, for the traditional copperplate I, press down for the dot, go out to the side, and then come down and press. Leave it open. And that would require an entry stroke for your next letter. Okay, so that's your capital I. Okay, so our next letter is the capital J. Now, this letter, like the capital F, will take up the whole ascender space, X height, and descender space as well. So it starts here at the sender height lightly, and then you press for your shaded stroke, come all the way down, loop over, then cross, and then your second stroke, I like to make it pointy, so I'll start out here, come out to the side. So I find this letter to be big, which it is. So I do variations of it, and also to mention that the exit stroke would connect to your lowercase letter. So a way to make this a bit smaller feeling is that I wouldn't go out to the side as much like the I. I could make the descender a little bit shorter, and just come, you see how it's, if you measured it, it's actually not that much shorter, but it feels smaller because this counter space here is a bit smaller than this one. So that's just a variation I do sometimes. Another traditional one. And coming out to the side and then going down. That's your capital J. Our next letter is the capital U, and the beginning is quite big. So it's like the T, but just larger in that it starts out with this thin hairline stroke, and then I'm going to press down, go below the waistline, way below. Then come around, and then press for a shaded stroke, and then come up almost to the waistline. And the second stroke does not go all the way up to the ascender height. It's actually about 2/3. Make a little line for myself. Go down. It should meet the first stroke, and then go up. Oh, I do have something on my pen nib. I don't know if you could see. A little piece of paper. So I'll go and clean that off. So when this happens, when you get a shaded stroke like this, where it's thick and it's supposed to be thin, look at your tools first before criticizing your lettering. So just there, I had a little piece of paper that picked up. So clean that off. I have a nice clean pen nib, some ink on it, and let's do another letter U. Okay. So I begin a little bit above the waistline, then press down for a thick stroke, come up and around, and press down. This is quite a big letter. Give yourself plenty of time with it. If that feels just like too much, you can make this first stroke a bit smaller. I have done that before. Just maybe loop it around to the up to the waistline. So if this feels more manageable for you, go for it. Our next letter is the letter Q. And once you've mastered this, you've also mastered the O, because it's basically the same, except the Q is going to have a tail at the bottom. So let's go up like this and create this, I like to call it a soft pretzel shape. I'll stop it right here. So to me, it kind of looks like a soft pretzel. So that's the entry stroke for this letter, for the letter Q, but it's also going to be the entry stroke for the O and the C and the G and the E. So you could do a few of those if you'd like to get it down. So just to continue the Q, I'm going to go all the way around. I'm pressing down, go up, press down, and then you like to keep that light as you're going up. And then you create just a little tail, and since I'm going down, I will press, but I'll end it off lightly. Okay, so that's one version, variation of the Q. Another, which some of my students call like a big 2, begins here lightly, press, Go all the way around. That's going to be light. And then you press for shaded stroke. Go a little bit past that first part. Create a loop. And this part would connect to, most likely, your U. Make that a little higher so it actually connects. So that is a variation of the Q that some people like and can do. So let's do another version of the first Q. Again, begin with that soft pretzel entry stroke. And this is mainly just, it's one stroke for the bulk of the letter. Come around and then release your pressure. Create that little tail. There's your capital Q. The next letter is capital X. It's pretty ornate. So I start off actually with this double loop. It's thin, and then I press, go up, then I press just slightly for that middle part, loop around, and then even though I'm going down, I'm going to try not to apply a lot of pressure. So this is a one-stroke letter. That is a lot of letter. I'm going to clean my pen nib because you could see with that exit stroke, it did come out a little thick, and I do have a heavy hand, so sometimes my pen nib does pick up paper. And I am using Hewlett-Packard premium laser paper, which I really like. So up, press, release. When you come around, press a little bit, release your pressure. As you come down, it might be a little thick anyway. And again, picking up paper. Okay, our next letter is quite a large one. The first stroke is like the capital U. We're doing a capital Y. The first stroke is similar. Starts out light. It's pretty big. Press, release, come around. Press, release. Your second stroke starts about 2/3 up on the center height space. Press all the way. Release your pressure. Loop around, and this exit stroke would connect to your next letter. Again, like the U, if you want to make this a bit smaller, go for it. And do one more of the traditional larger copperplate Y. Oops, got caught there just a little bit. It does happen. What I tend to do is just lift up my pen nib a little bit and try to reconnect. Okay, our next letter is a capital Z. Begin in the center height, then, and then you press. Come all the way around, press, release your pressure. You could create a loop, press again, and then cross over. So another variation you may like to do, I like to start out with a small little loop. I am going sideways, so that is going to be thin. And then I press in the middle, release my pressure, and that would also connect. I like to do a crossbar, but this would also connect to my lowercase letter. But let's do another traditional Z, copperplate Z. Press, release, go over, press, release, loop over, press, release, and cross over. This one's spaced a bit better, gives me a little bit more room to connect with the following letter. And as you've noticed, I letter this quite slowly. Copperplate is a slow script. I'm going maybe a bit more slowly than I usually do, but not that much more. So if you find that you're going fast and the letter forms aren't as uniform as you'd like them to be, try to slow your pace. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next page that starts with the letter K. Okay, so our next letter is the capital K. You have two options for entry strokes. The first one is more of like a wave. So it starts out light, you go up, press, release your pressure, go up. And the second stroke, I start out thin at the center height, I press, release my pressure, and go up, and press down for the dot. And my next stroke begins at the center height, thin, press, even though I'm going down, I'm going to release my pressure, keep it light, press again, and then release. And that would connect to a lowercase letter. Another entry stroke option is to loop around this way. This would require a little bit more space, and then the rest of the letter is pretty much the same. Up, press down, next stroke, press, release your pressure, press, release your pressure. So that's your letter K. So our next letter is the capital H, and like the K, you have the two options for entry strokes. So you could do the wave, up, press down, and then end up light. And the next stroke is the bulk of the letter, and it's just one stroke. You start out light, you press, you'll loop over, just going to create that crossbar, and come around, create another loop, press, and release your pressure, and that would connect to your next letter. So that is the H with the wave entry stroke. Now if you do the bigger loop entry stroke, begin here, loop around. That's going to be pretty fine throughout. It's a sideways stroke. Then I like to start out light. I press, release my pressure, cross over, press for a shaded stroke, release my pressure, and that is my letter H. I'll do one more. Our next letter is the capital L. Begins in the center space, like most of our capitals, right? And it's a sideways stroke, so it's pretty thin. You come down pretty low, almost to the waistline. Press all the way down, loop over, and that exit stroke would connect to your next letter. So let's do another L. Press, release, cross over. So we will now do the capital C, and our entry stroke will be that soft pretzel stroke. Remember how we worked on that for the Q? Start here, come around, and as you're going down, you're going to press. So we will do, the C is a one stroke letter. So we will begin that way, with our soft pretzel, and come all the way down, release our pressure, and come around. And this letter actually does not connect to your next lowercase, so you would create an entry stroke for that, right? So let's do another C. Sometimes I like to loop down. Just another variation. You could just stop it right here. So there's your capital C. Our next letter is the capital G, and it begins in a similar way to the C and the Q, but just a touch bigger. So I'm going to create that soft pretzel shape, but I'm really going to loop way down. Come around, I'm going to press, release my pressure. Then the second stroke is pretty thick all the way down. Usually I do try to keep the second stroke at the baseline, so I'm going to try to make this a little smaller. It looks like there's something on the tip of my pen nib, or was. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so it fits. Okay, it's a touch smaller, but generally the same shape. Loop around, press, go a little bit below the waistline's fine. I like to start out very lightly for the second stroke, and then I press, and then I release my pressure. Come up, and then press down for that dot. And if you're finding that the dots are kind of hard to get, like I'm going up and then I'm pressing down, you could simply just fill in a little circle. So there's your capital G. Okay, the next letter is capital E. I have two variations for this. So this is the pretzel, soft pretzel-like entry stroke is a little smaller usually for this, just a touch. Go around, I press. For that first part, I release my pressure. Press down again. Oh, I do definitely see a hair there. That does happen. So I'll do another one. Like that, and then I'll show you my variation. Press, and again, like with the C, sometimes I'll just kind of keep going. So that's just a variation. If you like that, go for it. So the other E I'd like to do, the entry stroke's a bit bigger. Again, it's a one-stroke letter, so give yourself plenty of time with this. It's pretty thin. I go around. Let me just stop here. That's what the entry stroke looks like. Then I'm going to loop over. I'm going to go under and then up, press, release my pressure. Typically, I don't lift my pen nib for this stroke. Sometimes I will make this a touch smaller, so let me try to do that again. Make that first top just a bit smaller, yeah. So those are the two different variations of the E. Our next letter is the letter O, which you've had practice with when creating the capital Q, the first variation of Q. So again, with that soft pretzel-like shape entry stroke, you go up, press, release, come up. Now you can press and release, or I'll show you a variation, which is a bit plainer, I guess. Let me just clean my pen nib. Okay. So up, around, I'm going to press, I'm going to go up, and I could just leave it here. It could come down a little bit, but I could keep it light and uncomplicated, I'd like to say. So I guess a more complicated version would be multiple loops inside. Up, and press, release, press, release, press, release. So sometimes I do like to have fun with capital O's. Okay, our next letter is S. I like to begin my capital S below the baseline, and it's a fine hairline stroke going all the way up. I loop around and then I press. Okay, I pressed a little late there, and then press again, and then you release. And this is also like a bit steeper angle than your slant line. like that S a bit more. I like it a little bit more shaded for most of the letter. Okay, let's do one more. Press, release, come up, press, release. Okay, our next letter is the letter W. You could begin with the wave entry stroke like we did for the K and the H. So the next part starts out thin and then I press for a shaded stroke. I like to end it off light so that's not too thick on the bottom. Then I go up, and that's all going to be a fine hairline stroke. I press for a shaded stroke and I taper it. And then my last stroke is a fine hairline stroke, but it goes above the center height. Sometimes I go way above. So another option is to do the entry stroke, like you did with the K and the H. There are many variations you could do for copperplate. I'm just showing you the very basic. Once you have the basic down, then you could really explore and expand upon that. I used to love this saying one of my calligraphy mentor, Karen Gorst, used to say to me, you have to know the rules in order to break them. So true. Our next letter is the capital V, and again you could start with the wave entry stroke and begin light, press. And this second part's a little wider than the W, first part of the W. Again, I like to go a little bit above the center line for that last stroke. Our next letter is the capital A. The A that I'm going to first show you is the one I typically do. It's actually a variation. I begin at the center height and I start out light and I press and I loop around and I create a little crossbar. And then the second stroke, I start out light again and I press, and then the exit stroke would be the entry stroke for my next letter. So this is just an A I feel very comfortable with and I typically do, but what you would find in older versions of copperplate is a different type of A. It begins a little bit below the waistline with a dot. You can go all the way up, so that'll be a fine hairline stroke. And then the second stroke, you could do it on a slant line. You're going to press pretty much all the way down. And then the last stroke, I'm going to create this loop that connects to the next letter. So that is actually your more traditional copperplate that you would find in really good books like Mastering Copperplate by Eleanor Winters. It was the first book I picked up, like 25 years ago when I learned copperplate calligraphy. And then later I studied with Eleanor Holland, who's a master scribe at Society of Scribes, which is a calligraphy guild in New York City. I highly recommend, if you haven't already, is to contact your local calligraphy guild. It's just such a great resource for calligraphers. Okay, so I'll do another A, my go-to A. Actually, I'll do a variation of it. So I'll keep that open, go down, and then I could loop this around, and then I could just create a crossbar. So there's many different variations. I really like the letter A. This is my go-to. Our next letter is the capital M. I begin with a dot Go up with a fine hairline stroke. Have pointy tops, and then a shaded stroke down, up, point, up. I like it pointy. However, when I first learned Copperplate, it was a different variation. It began the same way. Press down, go up. And then it was a rounded top. Press. You can, since this is such a wide letter, you can stop here and move your hand just a little bit. Press and release. So that's a typical Copperplate M. And the M I choose to do is a bit more pointy. I sometimes add a loop to them. So like that second peak, I would typically do something like that. Let's do one more. Okay, our last capital letter is the capital N. So I begin in a similar way as the M. Press down, release my pressure, go up, fine hairline stroke. My next stroke comes pretty much all the way down. I like it a little curved, so start out light, I press, release my pressure, and go up, and usually a little bit above the cinder height like I did with the W and the V. Press, release. If you want, you could create a loop here. So let's do a variation of that. Press, release. So that's your capital N. Okay, so now we'll quickly go over numbers. So for the number 1, it's a 2-stroke number. We'll begin going up. And then the second stroke, I like to go light and then I press. Number 2, 1-stroke letter. Around, press, release your pressure. Loop around. In this end part, I do like to go down for a little dot. Press, release, around, press. Okay, number 3. Another 1-stroke number. I do see something on my nib, so it's a good opportunity to clean it. Sometimes get a little bit of fuzz from, I do use a paper towel to clean my pen nibs. Sometimes it could just be lifting up stuff from the paper. Okay, so 3, 1-stroke number. Create a little loop. I'm going to the side, so that'll be a fine hairline stroke. For this part, I do keep it light for the most part. And then for the second part, I'll press for a shaded stroke, come up and press down for a little dot. Let's do another one. Press, release, press. Okay, number 4. It is a 2-stroke number. You probably have noticed that all these numbers they're more of the newer version that start at the baseline, and they go above the waistline, but are about maybe halfway on the center height. So they're taller than a lot of your lowercase letters. Start out thin, cross over to the side, and then press down for that second stroke, the 4. Okay, so number 5 is a 3-stroke number. And the first stroke begins right here in the middle. Second stroke, up, press down, release, up, press down for your dot, go up for the last stroke. I like to press down for just to give it a little bit more weight. So again, start here. Up, press, release, press, 6 is a 2-stroke number. Begin here with the dot, go all the way around, press, release. You could stop there. Second stroke, begin here, press, release, and just try your best to connect. Doesn't always connect so easily, but just try your best. Press, come up, press for that shaded stroke. Come up, press, release your pressure, and you could meet it with the fine hairline stroke. Okay, next number is 7. It's actually 2 strokes because I like to do a crossbar, but if you don't, then it's a 1-stroke number. So since I'm looping around and going to the side, that's all going to be a fine hairline stroke. Start out light, press. Just leave it there. I do like doing crossbars for my 7. Eight is a 1-stroke number. Up, press, release. So this is the 8 I like. If you do like it closed, you could basically do the same shape and then just close it. Okay, 9 is a 2-stroke number. I like to begin here, press, come around, then press, release my pressure, and then create a little dot. Start here, that's a fine hairline stroke, press, release, start out light, press, release, up, and then press down for that dot. Okay, 0, our last number. So it's 2 downward strokes. Begin on top here, fine hairline stroke, press, release my pressure. Fine hairline stroke, press, release my pressure, and meet that bottom stroke. Again, you're creating more of an oval shape and not a circle. Press, release, and just try your best to keep on the slant. I notice when some of my students create their own angle, and that's completely fine. So sometimes you'll just find, I'm not a big fan of having my letter slant at 55 degrees or 54 degrees, which is the traditional copperplate slant line. Maybe it's going to be 60 for you. Maybe it'll be 50. So see what you feel comfortable with. Just as long as it's consistent, it'll look good. So let's briefly go over punctuation. So for basically, I'm just going to follow the typical copperplate guidelines. So when I go up, it's going to be fine hairline strokes. And when I go down, it'll be thicker shaded strokes. So for the question mark, I do like to keep it a little bit light in the middle. So I'll start off with, I'll start off here around the waistline. So here's my X height. And I'll make it about the height of a number. Little dot, I'll go up, press, and then I may just keep it light here and then do a little dot. I might press a little bit more to give it some more weight. Exclamation point. I tend to do these rather fast. So, and a little bit taller than my question mark. I'll begin thick and I'll release, and then I'll dot it. So the problem with dotting it first is that if you do this quickly, it might not align. That came out okay, actually. But yeah, I would recommend do that part first, maybe a little longer, and then dot it. Let's see, so hashtag, even though this is a downward stroke, I might go just like a little light on it. Nothing too fancy. The @ symbol, I'd create this like open looking A, press down, go around. So I'm not starting at the baseline because I need space for this part that it ends with, the circular part at the bottom. Semicolons, colons, commas. So let's do a comma first. What I would typically do is maybe draw a little circle and then come out, or you could press and release, whatever you feel comfortable with. Create a little circle, and come out. Parentheses. I start out light, press, release my pressure. Start out light, press, release my pressure. So I guess those are the more common ones. Brackets. Again, I guess you have to do everything on an angle to match your letter forms, right? So even if I'm going down, I probably would keep these a bit light.